Good morning, y'all. I'm Dennis Markatos-Soriano, Executive Director of the East Coast Greenway Alliance. I'd really like to thank you for joining us today for the virtual Southeast Greenways and Trails Summit. These are some of the toughest times we've ever faced. In just the past month, worldwide COVID-19 cases have grown 10 times to over 1 million. Over 1 million people, and deaths have climbed past 50,000. To slow the spread before we get a vaccine, changes are disrupting our economy faster than ever. Here in the US, more Americans lost their jobs in 2 weeks than in all of the Great Recession over 18 months. Millions more have had cuts to their pay, including all of us at the East Coast Greenway Alliance. We are all adjusting as best we can amidst the stress of a spreading disease that separates us from the people we love. For you to take time amidst all this to be with us today is quite an honor, and I thank you. But we're here together today because this work gives us joy and because we know it's what our communities need. Greenways and trails have restorative power. In fact, transformative power. Greenways and trails, they remind me of the artistic symbol of our Southeast Summit, the butterfly, as presented by Jacksonville-based artist Sarah Crooks. A butterfly is a creature of transformation that I think is very relevant to us here in this crisis. Before the crisis, we were like little caterpillars inching along the ground, focused on our eating and our consuming on our own lives. But now we're all wrapped up in our homes like cocoons, biding our time for what's next. It's my hope that we can come out of this crisis like a beautiful butterfly, ready to make the most of the time that we have on this amazing planet. Like the monarch butterfly that journeys along the East Coast Greenway corridor from Maine to Florida, beyond political borders of cities and states and even nations, from Canada to Mexico. Perhaps we will emerge from our cocoons with the wisdom from flight above meadows and forest that we in fact are all connected. That threats to health anywhere is a threat to health everywhere. Like famous Southeasterner civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. said, when he said a threat to injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Perhaps our greenways can help connect people across lines of division that have gotten too deep and too wide of late. Indeed, greenway progress and programs can bring our people together to tackle shared challenges as we rebuilding communities, rebuilding our connection with nature, and rebuilding our health. I look forward to flying with you in the months and years ahead. Our first summit in 2017 was in Durham, North Carolina, where I am today. We wanted to be with you in person again this week, but we're glad to at least be with you virtually. And I've been amazed to see how well our staff has shifted gears to virtual, recording remarkable sessions and setting up live content that we're sharing with you today. A big thank you to V, to Devin, to Brent, to Sarah, John, and Niles on our staff, along with top-notch volunteers and partners on our summit, host committee for their hard work putting it all together. Feel free to clap in your house as if we're all together. We've all been blown away too by you. The number of registered people for this summit has passed 350 from all over the Southeast and all over North America. And you are doing critical work in your communities. The 1,000 miles of Greenway we've developed together during these past 28 years is giving people needed peace of mind and physical and spiritual health in these challenging times. With gyms closed, our wide greenways are giving people equitable public space for much needed physically distant exercise. Before the crisis, these segments already ranked as one of the most popular parks in America. And now Greenway uses surged almost as much as toilet paper sales, with several segments reporting a doubling of bike rides, runs, and walks. We may not be on the front lines with our courageous friends at the Red Cross and nurses and doctors in our region and across the world, but we play a crucial role. Our Greenways are systematically working to improve public health now and in the future. Our Greenways provide safe, accessible space to prevent and eradicate obesity, type 2 diabetes, and other underlying health conditions that increase risks for people during this pandemic. What you have done and are doing in your communities by developing and stewarding greenways and trails has saved lives, and it's lifting up the quality of life for everyone. Last week, our federal leaders passed a needed relief bill. Now they're beginning to craft a stimulus bill, and we need to do our best to make Greenway infrastructure investment a core component. Please join the East Coast Greenway Alliance in the weeks ahead as we work with partners all over the country to lift up the return on such investment and the public support for that investment as a win-win-win stimulus solution to support jobs in the economy, to improve public health, and to address climate change. Now is the time for us to be bold, calling for billions of dollars in investment for greenways, not just airports and highway expansions. You know, we had hoped to hold this summit in Jacksonville, Florida, and I encourage you to visit Jacksonville next chance, where remarkable work is underway by many, including our lead summit sponsor, the Community Foundation for Northeast Florida. Let's imagine now that we're there in a city sculpted by the St. Johns River that is a few miles from beautiful beaches and the amazing Greenway segments on Amelia Island and in the Timucuan Preserve to the northeast. We are now in the southernmost part of the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor. And if you head south a bit, we can find the oldest European-founded city in the United States, St. Augustine, established in 1565 by the Spanish. Wow, I wish we were there together. But there's so many partners that I want to thank that are from there that helped us pull it all together, even virtually. Please join me in the chat box below by thanking our many summit partners based in the Jacksonville region, including Downtown Vision, the East Side Environmental Council, Groundwork Jacksonville, the St. Johns River to Sea Loop Alliance, the Health Planning Council of Northeast Florida, the Lincolnville Museum and Cultural Center, the Northeast Florida, TPO, the American Planning Association of Florida, Florida Blue, Bike Florida, and the City of Neptune Beach. And I would also like to thank all of the sponsors who made this summit possible. From McAdams and Tool to GSK and Alta, so many firms, foundations, and organizations that are giving us the opportunity to learn from each other, to get inspired by each other, to connect, and to think through how we can emerge from our cocoons in the months ahead. Let's get ready to fly together. Now, I'd like to introduce a leader from one of our summit sponsors, AARP. As demographics shift across the country and across the world, AARP is an important partner for all of us. Danielle Arrigoni is the director of AARP's Livable Communities program, working to foster age-friendly states and communities across the country. And we're delighted to partner with a leader such as her, putting her planning degrees to work to enhance the lives of people of all ages, especially those most vulnerable when there's a lack of safe access to biking and walking facilities. Danielle, thank you for your support and your involvement today.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Really happy to be here. I'd be even happier to be with you all in person, having had a great bike ride on some of the trails around Jacksonville of the kind that Dennis just took us down, at least in our minds. But really happy that we have all come together. I don't know about you, but I find myself really hungry for these kinds of connections these days. I think that we're all struggling to make heads or tails of this new world that we live in the moment, and make heads or tails of the world that we're going to emerge into. I think we all know that it's going to be a very different place than we all lived in even a month ago. But it reminds me, and these days more than ever, it reminds me of how important that we are creating communities that can allow every person to thrive in times of crisis and when we recover. AARP comes at this work, this livable communities work, from that perspective. Our desire, our interest is in ensuring that older adults can live their best lives at every age. You may not know that by 2034, we will be comprised as a country more of people over the age of 65 than under 18. And that will be the first time in our country's history that that is the case. And we know that in order to allow that cohort, our members, if you will, to thrive, that we need to create places that work for them, that offer a wide range of housing choice and diversity, that offer a wide range of transportation options and mobility solutions, that we create great places that are accessible and safe and enjoyable. And the great thing about our approach, I would like to believe, is that the solutions that we put forward, the solutions that we land on, are ones that make the communities better for all people. These are not just solutions that work only for older adults, but by bringing older adults' needs to the table, it helps us uncover and build a base of support for solutions that really make life better for everyone. Gil Penalosa has been one of our great thought partners over the years, and you'll hear much more from him in just a moment about how and why it's so important to think about communities from the needs of an 80-year-old as well as an 8-year-old. But I do want to throw a few numbers at you. So 2034 is the first one. That's the year we're going to be more comprise more of older adults than people under the age of 18, than kids. 53, we actually have 53 state offices. So there's a state office that AARP staffs in each one of your states, including each of the 15 states that the Greenway runs through. Those folks in those state offices and the 60,000 volunteers that we have in our network are at your disposal. We want to be partners to you all as you create places that support biking, that support walking. We know that that's a critical part of what makes a livable community come to fruition. Another number, 450. We have 450 communities that have signed up to become more age-friendly through our network of age-friendly states and communities. A lot of those are in Florida. Florida's been a wonderful leader in this. In fact, the state of Florida, similarly as the state of Maine and state of Massachusetts, state of New York, several others, have committed to become age-friendly states. So what that means for you is that means that you have local government and state government leaders who are committed to examining their housing, their transportation, their public spaces to make sure that they work for people of all ages. So again, if you're not sure if you live in a community that's age-friendly or maybe want to convince your local leaders to become age-friendly, I'd invite you to look at our website, aarp.org/livable. Another statistic, 376, that's about the number of grants that we've issued through our Community Challenge Grant Program over the last 3 years. That program is open now. I know there's a video posted to the website that gives a little bit more color and flavor of what that grant program does, but those are for quick action grants in your community around some of those same topics: housing, transportation, placemaking. So really encourage you to think about that. The deadline for those grant applications this year is May 15th. So you have a little bit more time to get your ideas together. Once again, I think none of us really know what world we're going to emerge into, but I do believe that there's going to be more of a hunger, more of a need than ever for dynamic public places that bring people together, people of all ages. 200, here's my last number for you, 200. That's the number of parks in Bogota, Colombia, that Gil Penalosa helped to lead the design and development of when he worked there. He actually is the father, if I can say, of the Ciclovia open streets movement that we are seeing every day be something that communities turn to. But these days we're seeing even more appetite, I think, for turning our streets over to the people who use them in the form of walking and biking. Gil Penalosa has been an advisor to many of the organizations that we know are sort of so important in this work, groups like America Walks and Vision Zero Network, World Urban Parks. He's founded 880 Cities, which has been a partner to AARP for several years now. He was actually the keynote speaker at our conference a few years ago. He's directly advised communities and states in Alaska and New Mexico and Oregon in partnership with us. And so I'm really delighted that we have a partner in Gil Penalosa and his team at 880 Cities. And with that, I invite you to get inspired, and I'm happy to introduce Gil Penalosa.
Thank you very much, Danielle and Dennis. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be with everyone. Obviously, this is quite different. I was going to be live for an hour with hundreds of slides, and instead we are virtual and a short introduction. But it is great. I love when Dennis was talking about the butterflies, because the butterflies have been for hundreds of years. And you know, these butterflies go from Canada through almost all of the East Coast Greenway into Mexico. They do over 3,000 miles every year, going down before the winter, coming back during the spring. And usually they do around 75 miles per day. Can you imagine these tiny butterflies, 75 miles? And it's interesting because they only live for 2 or 3 weeks. So most of them, they go up to 4 or 5 generations on the way down and another 4 or 5 generations on the way up. And how do they do it? Through teamwork, everyone helping each other. It doesn't matter the size or the age or the color, everybody is in it together. So I think maybe there is so much to learn from these magnificent butterflies that we enjoy in the trails and the greenways. But maybe the butterflies is one of the few things that are gonna stay the same, because there is so much change. Now we're doing so much through the internet. There are many, many universities that for 10, 15, 20 years, we're talking about doing online courses. People say, yes, we do it. No, we don't do it. It's good. No, it's bad, whatever. And after 20 years, they haven't done one course. And in the last 2 weeks, they have gone 100% online. Why? Because they had to. So all of a sudden, there are things that are changing. And when we think about, we're a little bit anxious on how we're going to come out, but let's think about some amazing positive changes that have taken place. For example, issues such as the life expectancy. Only 60 years ago, the life expectancy in the world was 49 years. Today is 72. In the US, it was 69. Today it's over 80. Can you imagine? Only 60 years ago, the life expectancy is 69. And many other things. Water. 60 years ago, half of the people on Earth didn't have access to water. Today is less than 10%. Extreme poverty. 60 years ago, 72%. So 7 out of 10 people were living with $2 or less. Today is less than 10%. So we've gone from 72% to 9% of extreme poverty. So there are some amazing positive accomplishments. Of course, at the same time, there are some that have not been very good. For example, over the last 80 years, we've been building cities around the car, around car mobility, and not around people happiness. And that's one of the things that have created a lot of problems, such as obesity, because now we don't move. You know, people tend to think that obesity has been around forever. No, in 1980, 40 years ago, it was only 10%, 11%. In 1990, it was 20%. In the year 2000, it was 30%. Now it's 42%. So we've gone in only 40 years from 1 out of 10 to 4 out of 10, to more than 4 out of 10. This is a huge problem. It's not how people look, but the issue of obesity has to do with diabetes. In the US, more than 40 million people have diabetes. Obesity has to do with heart attacks, with respiratory problems, with all of these issues that are huge impact on COVID-19, because the COVID-19, most of the people that are dying is not really by age, it's by health. Healthy people, most healthy people are taken in that are infected. They stay home for a couple of weeks and then they're well. Even the ones that go to the hospitals, most people that are healthy go in and go out and have more lives. But most of the people that are dying have a lot of preconditions. So this, and this is why I also think that talking about greenways and trails is so critical. I mean, the East Coast Greenway is just amazing. Over 3,000 miles, 15 states, over 450 cities, already more than 1,000 miles are done. So I think this is really, really, really exciting. Why? Because a lot of the things that the greenways and trails have to do is with health. And I think that at this moment, we gotta do as much as possible to position greenways and trails with health. If this was 2008, we should be positioning greenways and trails about economic development, how this is gonna improve our economy. But in 2020, it has to be about health. So all of the sudden, decision makers will have greenways and trails almost synonymous with mental health and physical health. I run an organization. I'm founder of 880 Cities, as Danielle said. What is 880 Cities? It's a simple but powerful concept. What if everything that we did in our cities, the greenway and the trail, but also the sidewalk, the crosswalk, the school, the library, the restaurant, the business, everything had to be great for an 8-year-old and for an 80-year-old, not 8 to 80, 8 and 80 as an indicator species. Because if it's good for the 8 and it's good for the 80, it's gonna be good for everybody. We need to stop building our cities as if everybody was 30-year-old and athletic and create cities for all. That is the concept of 880. And I think with greenways and trails, that's what it's about. So I think that it's also exciting because I think for everyone on the line that works on greenways and trails, this is a fantastic time. How are we gonna move forward? This crisis is gonna pass. We're gonna move forward. And I think there are almost like 3 scenarios. One, some people are calling, oh, I hope we'll be back to how we were 90 days ago. That would be pretty bad because we know that 90 days ago, as well as for the last 40 or 50 years, we've been building cities that are unsustainable. They are not sustainable environmentally, they are not sustainable financially, they are not good for mental health, they're not good for physical health. So let's hope we don't return to the past. Others are saying, oh, we're gonna come out of this being more isolated, living more individually. I hope we also don't come out of this. My hope is that after this, we'll realize that we are totally interconnected. We really depend on each other. The virus is spreading in small cities, in large ones, in poor ones, in rich ones, in big countries, in small countries, everybody. And there's one earth, we're totally interconnected. So maybe we're gonna work on all of this. For example, we're gonna work on our health and happiness. We know that part of being healthy, maybe 30% of it is DNA and quality of healthcare. But about 70%, almost 70%, is about healthy lifestyles. So how are we going to position the trails and the greenways around healthy lifestyles? Because a lot of the things that we need to be healthy have a lot to do with the trails and the greenways. For example, sleeping, being physically active, being close to nature, eating well, and sociability. So greenways and trails are at least very directly to 3 of them, to being physically active, which by the way, of the 13 states that it goes through, people are very inactive. More than 1 out of 4 people are not active in most of them, and 1 out of 3 in the other half. So being physically active, being close to nature, being sociability, and in addition, sleeping, because if you are active, then you're probably gonna sleep better. So I wanna invite everybody to let's focus on the benefits. I mean, whatever each one of us are doing around greenways and trails have so many benefits to culture, to the environment, to transportation, to economic development. But in 2020, let's focus on health. because that is what everybody has on their mind. And we need to raise the level of awareness. Once the crisis is over, there's going to be tons of money. There's going to be billions and billions and billions, because we need to kickstart the economy. The economy has to rebound, but we cannot invest those billions of dollars into doing more roads for cars when we know this has not worked. And I've been talking to, yesterday I was at a call with a lot of the leaders of parks in the US, and they were saying that they were getting prepared that after the crisis, they're gonna cut their budgets because the first thing that they do is cut parks. No, we cannot accept that this is gonna be the normal. We need to rechange the normal. The normal is that we need to invest in the trails, in the greenways, in the parks. There are projects that have a lot of labor. It's very labor intensive. So it's gonna be fantastic for the economy. But more than that is because it's gonna have a huge impact on the mental health and the physical health. Also, we got lots of new partners. When all of the indoor gymnasiums are being closed, a lot of new people are going to the trails to walk, to run, to bike. So a lot of those people are gonna be on board. So we cannot just accept that the money is gonna go to the highway. We need to do cities radically different. I mean, people are always waiting for a magic pill. How are we gonna have a magic pill for the health, for the economy? But the magic pill is simple. It's walking and cycling and running, especially as a normal part of everyday life, as well as sometimes on the leisure time using trails and greenways. And one of the things that I love about the East Coast Greenway is that it's like a spinal cord. But this spinal cord has to have many, many ribs going into it. So we need all of these greenways not to be a drive to greenway, but we need a walk or bike to the greenways. We need to have greenways east, west, and north, south in every city, whether the cities of 10,000 people or 500,000 or millions. We need to be totally interconnected. People should be able to walk and bike to the trails and to the greenways, and that's how it has. Many of the cities along the East Coast Greenway are going to have huge growth, especially the ones in the south, in Georgia and in Florida. Many of the cities are. How are we doing those cities? Unfortunately, many of those are being done sprawl with very few greenways, very few trails. They're being done as we've done it for the last 40 years. No, post-crisis, we're gonna do it radically different, and we wanna work on this. And finally, I wanna make a call to, whenever we talk about our greenways and trails, let's focus on the most vulnerable people. Who are the most vulnerable? The children and the elderly, by age, but obviously everyone that is poor, everyone that has disabilities. And actually, this crisis has shown the huge impact of poverty. When we look at the maps of the cities in the US by zip code, there are many zip codes next to each other, where some people living in some neighborhoods, their life expectancy is 60. 10 minutes away, their life expectancy is 90. It doesn't make any sense. And when the life expectancy is only 60, usually they don't have any parks, usually no trails, the schools are bad quality, there is a food desert, there's not even a place to buy good food, even if they wanted to. And by the way, the initial data from New York shows that most of the people that are dying is coming out of the neighborhoods, the low-income neighborhoods, the neighborhoods of poverty. And actually, that's one of the fantastic also benefits of greenways and trails, that the greenways and trails connect. They go through the poor neighborhood, through the rich neighborhood, through the residential, through the commercial, through everyone. And if there is something that we need at this time, is connectivity. We need to connect everybody. And when I talk about the elderly, and Danielle was talking about the numbers of older adults, we need to realize that the older adults are givers. They are not takers. They are magnificent assets to every community. They are not a liability. But I'm afraid that many people, even some people making dumb jokes on internet saying that the virus is taking away boomers, something so stupid, they don't realize, by the way, that the boomers are the ones that made the millennials and raised them and educated them. And the boomers are also part of the ones that practically eliminated extreme poverty around the world and clean water and so on. Of course, there are some big issues such as climate change, but we gotta come together, all generations. So I hope that also after this crisis, we don't brand the older people as something that is terrible, something that is negative. I hope that after this crisis and a few years from now, young people won't be blaming the older people for the economic crisis. And they won't be saying, oh, I wish we had let more older people die because then the economy would be in better place. No, we need to live together, and each generation has its benefits. Some have more experience, others have less, but have more energy and more enthusiasm. So this has to be together. So I think that we need to come out of this change, and we need to work hard on the change. We cannot go back to the same. I know that people don't like change because they say, oh, because doing more of the same is easy. But we cannot go back to do more of the same. Right now, every city across America and Canada and around the world, we should be closing streets and opening places for people to walk, keeping physical distance. If we want people to keep the 6 feet, we gotta be able to have the space, and the sidewalks don't have the space. So we need the streets. Right now, every city of any size should have corridors where people east, west, and north, south, with people could go from anywhere to anywhere safely in the city. Imagine if every city had some corridors, a few of them, east, west, and north, south. Just take a lane from a road. There are many roads with 2 and 3 lanes. Take one of them, put some pylons, and create the corridor, and leave it during the transition. Maybe now with the better weather and the transition, we are going to get so many people using that maybe we'll say, oh, you know, maybe this should become permanent. But these are the kind of things. The politicians that are not doing these changes under this crisis are not going to do it after the crisis. So maybe also we're going to have to work on voting them out. So we need to realize doing nothing doesn't cost nothing. Doing nothing has a huge cost. So that's why we need to invest in those greenways and those trails. And we need to do alliances. We really need to broaden the greenways and trails movement have to invite the people of public health. Right now, but I always have thought that public health is the best ally, because too many decision makers within our own bubble, we think greenways and trails are the best thing on earth. But that's because we're in this bubble. Many decision makers think that's just fun and games. Well, fun and games in itself is very important. But we need to tell the decision makers that it's also about public health. But also, let's invite the people from education and the people from economic development and the people from planning and transportation and all of this. We need to build those alliances. We need to invite to the alliance the people in the public sector at all levels, the municipalities, the counties, the state, the federal government. We need to invite the NGOs. We need to invite everybody. We need to develop a vision of the communities, a shared vision of the communities where we want to live. That vision is not enough because cities are full of visions. We need action, action, action. And if we combine the shared vision with the action, I think we're going to come out with cities that are vibrant, with healthier communities, where all citizens are going to be able to live happier. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you, Gil. Outstanding. So many great points. And I've seen in the chat box people saying that they've been nodding for the last several minutes nonstop. So thank you so much. And obviously, if we were all together, we'd all give a nice round of applause. Thank you, Gil. Now, there's so much that we need to do together. And I really love the point that you made about, connections and how we can work together. And, we've been a little bit too often, we've been those either in our cocoons, or we've been a caterpillar that just hasn't seen all these other allies in our little silo, we just stay, and we're trying to reach across. The East Coast Greenway does try, but we want to try harder. We want to be that butterfly that can see so much further and can work with so many others. And so I wonder, if you have any tips on, have you seen some alliances really build well with public health? And, especially focus on this opportunity that we have with stimulus. Have you seen where a a campaign has gone where the nonprofits worked well with public health and they worked well with the elected leaders, and they got remarkable results in a big campaign. I'll bring up one, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on one or two as well. So last year, the East Coast Greenway Alliance, working with all the great partners that are here in this virtual summit and beyond, we raised actually not literally raised to our organization or anything, but the investment, the public investment into the East Coast Greenway last year was $250 million. And that is going to be moving the Greenway forward in many different projects. It was US DOT build, it's 40 million in projects. It was municipalities and counties stepping up and states stepping up, like Connecticut, which has been a remarkable leader in building the East Coast Greenway. And in the Southeast, I mean, Florida with the Sun Trails program has been amazing. Florida and South Carolina were the hosts of the Build program recipients. So in Charleston, South Carolina, really key bridge over the Ashley River. So it does seem to be happening, but how do we make sure these alliances stay strong and build to get even more resources? Because that's what we need. Just like you said, billions of dollars. All it takes is 2.5 billion. The cost of a bridge of I-95 over the Potomac, that same cost would complete the whole East Coast Greenway for 3,000 miles and create that spine that we're talking about that we can build the ribs off of. So, Gil, have you seen some remarkable examples of partnerships that were built? People came together. Yes, we all have our egos, but the main thing is that we work together and that we achieve an impact. So what have you seen with that, Gil?
Well, I think that the most important thing in this campaign to get funding, as well as to get the action to do it, because sometimes even the funding is not enough if they don't have the action, is that it's not about greenways and trails. Many times we try to go and ask, it's about greenways and trails and they are so great. No. We gotta think what's in it for them. So we need to go to public health and think, okay, what is this for them? So then we're gonna talk about, the obesity is growing, the heart attacks, the strokes, depression, anxiety. Following this crisis and people being indoors, the depression and anxiety and many other mental health issues are skyrocketing around the world. So we gotta arm ourselves with the benefits. Fortunately now, there are many studies, very good studies on how being close to nature improves mental health. So we're gonna talk to the public health people, but it's on what's in it for them. When we go to the elected officials, we know that many of them are concerned is how to get reelected. Unfortunately, because they get elected and the same day that they get elected, that night, the number one priority for the next 4 years is how to get reelected. So, okay, let's talk about votes. So let's talk to them about how the people that use the trails, plus their families and spouses and children and parents and neighbors and whatever, but let's talk votes with the elected officials. When we go to economic development, let's tell them that many of the knowledge sector are moving, the people that work in it, they want to move to places where there are greenways and trails and open spaces and parks and interconnected, where there are grids of it. So if they want to have the best companies today are settling where they have the access to workers at the highest quantity. So I would say whether it's public health or politicians or economic development or universities or business community or whatever, it's about them. It's not about us. Before any meeting, before any approach, let's think what's in it. The greenways and the trails is the means, is not the end in approaching any of these decision makers. Way too often, we do it the opposite. We just think that this is so obvious and the benefits are so many that for example, AARP can be a magnificent. AARP has 38 million members, paid members, and many of those millions are along the East Coast Greenway. And many of them are everywhere, and they are fantastic also volunteers, and they're active. Keep in mind, imagine that you had an army of boomers, of AARP members, 38 million paid members. Get any of them, move any percentage, promoting trails. And also they have experience, they have knowledge, but also they have time. So imagine those people, these groups. I'm a member too. I've been a member for a few years, because now anybody can be a member of any age, because it's not just for the people that are 60 or 65 or whatever. It's anybody, because if you are 30, your parents might be over 60, your grandparents might be over 80. So, but imagine those people emailing, making phone calls, going to City Hall when they're talking about greenways and trails. Imagine the pressure. Also, let's pick sources. Danielle spoke about the community grants. Now there's a lot of money that AARP is giving out all over the US on community grants. Those are community grants that might not be tons of money, but it's the base. Once you have that money, then you can go to the local government and to the private sector, and you can piggyback into others and invest. It would be great if all of the Southern AARP go to this conference, would get a lot of members of the Greenways and Trails organizations applying to AARP for community grants.
Absolutely, Gil. And I just want to say, you know what, we've run into almost 10:15, and we have so much content that we want to share with people today. So I want to have that be one of the final words here about how we can partner with AARP, to partner with so many, and to really focus on health, because that is a focus for our country right now. And it's something where greenways and trails make a difference. Also just want to talk about how we connect culture. I want to thank specifically the great states of the Southeast along the East Coast Greenway, from Virginia and North Carolina to South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. Every state has its amazing qualities. I talk about, from the key lime pie down in Key West to the peach cobbler, the banana pudding, and then all the way up to the blueberry pie up in Maine. That's what we're connecting. It's culture. It's the indigenous lands from the Timucua to the Passamaquoddy. It's a portal to connecting with history and heritage, from the Gullah Geechee people to the Underground Railroad, from the Boston Tea Party site to George Washington's marches for independence. So there's so much that the Greenway is bringing. There's so much we want to do. We want to do it better, and we want to learn from each other. And that's why we're gathered today with this summit. And so I want to encourage everyone to go check out the great content that we have. Let's hop on over to greenway.org. A dozen recorded sessions starting at 10:15. And our sponsors from Tool Design and McAdams and others were involved in many of these, not just financially supporting, but also in helping with the content and speaking. Have an amazing lineup. So the Healthy Communities, the Health Planning Council of Northeast Florida, Dover Coal and Partners and the City of Charleston are going to speak soon. Ashleyville Neighborhood Association and the St. Johns River to Sea Loop Alliance. There's so many good people and institutions involved in this, and we're excited to give you this content. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you also join with us live later in the day. As you can see at noon, we're going to have a great talk by a leader at the Florida Department of Transportation. And we also will have a talk about digging into the equity issues and how do we connect not just with the cultures, and how do we purchase the ice cream and the pie, but how do we make greenways welcoming for everyone? How do we develop that process? And I just want to say that website one more time. It's greenway.org/Southeast Summit 2020. Good luck to you in your cocoon. And here's to us emerging in the months ahead, ready to fly with renewed clarity, respect, strength, and unity. Thank you, Gil, so much for your wise words today. And everyone, let's have another great day here in the Southeast and get ready for the future. Excellent. Thank you, Gil.
Thank you, Dennis. It's been great. And the last message is that when we use health, it's a fantastic umbrella because it has no political parties, it has no age, no race, no gender, no ethnicity. Everyone is under the umbrella of public health and more at this time. So I want to thank everybody and let's re-energize. Let's take these weeks to re-energize, to learn, to share, to connect with others and be even more energized and ready to go. And let's make sure that we will not go back to the same. The future has to be healthier and brighter for the Greenways and Trails movement in the US and around the world.
Amen. Let's do it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.